You talked a little bit about your background, and what I would want to say to people is if you're looking for a traditional Episcopal candidate, this is not your guy. But if you're looking for someone who is an absolute trophy of the grace of God, a product of the United Methodist Church, and somebody who really has something to bring for such a time as this, I think you do well to consider Sylvester Weatherall. Sylvester, you grew up on the streets of St. Louis, of East St. Louis. And not only did you grow up there, but you assimilated into that culture. For you, conversion not only changed your life, but almost certainly saved your life. Tell us about your early years. Tell us a little bit more about that journey and how United Methodism spoke into you.
Shane, and not a lot of people know this about me. When I was 9 years old, my dad worked like everybody, 2 jobs. Yeah. Mom didn't work. Mom took care of us. That was her job, and she did a very good job of it. My dad worked at a tire factory. Now, most people don't know what that is. That is literally when you take these big pieces of wood that literally hold railroad tracks together. And in those days, they hired people to carry those to the creosote vat, was the preservative, and they didn't have machines to do it. The men were their machines. That was my dad's job. Right. On the weekends, he cut down trees for the paper factory, which was another job that he had. My dad, I can remember when I was 9 years old, waiting for him to come home, and he didn't. And my mother soon got the word that a tree had fell on him. From that moment on, my mother became the head of our household, and I became the man of my household. This was in the 50s and 60s when women were not heads of households. My mother had a hard time. And at 9 years old, I literally became the male of a household and had to learn things very quickly in life. 2 years later, my mom was in a horrible car accident and she was left in a coma for 9 months. She didn't wake up. When she finally woke up, it was 6 years before she even knew I was her son.
Wow.
And so I had to take care of my sisters. I had to not let them, at 14 years old, separate us and place us in different homes because we had no extended relatives, except for an aunt who couldn't take care of us. And so we literally rented a truck. I got my license at 14 and moved us to the projects. And for us, that was a step up. But living in the projects was a tough place for a 16-year-old and his 4 sisters and brother.
So here you are, barely able to legally drive today at 16. Yeah. You are living in one of the most turbulent cities in the United States.
Yes.
A city literally on fire part of the time. I mean, a turbulent city. Yes. And all of a sudden, you are literally the head of a household in the projects of East St. Louis. Yes. And that played out in very predictable ways for you, didn't it?
It really did. It led to all of the stuff you could suspect. To survive, you had to be a part of gangs. To survive, you had to know how to survive on the street. To survive, you had to know how to hustle. And I'm happy to say my family did survive. All of us got a high school diploma, and 5 of us had college degrees. So we survived by the grace of God. But I survived because I understood how the streets of East St. Louis work. I used to tell people when I first got converted, I used to hustle to put food on the table. Now I hustle to change lives for Jesus because it's essentially the same thing.
That's good. Similar skill set, different motives, different outcomes.
Yeah.
So there is a point, though, where you're on the streets and something happens inside of you that says, there is more to life than what I have. There is a paradigmic shift for you, and the United Methodist Church was a part of that.
Yes. I didn't even know what a United Methodist Church was because at my age, so many things had happened negative to me and my family. Church wasn't really high on my list, although my mother insisted on it when I was a child. And her insistence, particularly after her accident, made me not want nothing to do with the church or even God. But after I reached a point in my life where I had the things that you're supposed to be feeling successful. At 19 years old, I had a brand new house built from the ground up. I had the cars. I had a wife and family. I should be happy on the inside, but it wasn't. And I tried to go back and to the churches that I knew in my time, not Methodist church. We had one church to me, and it was either Church of God of Christ or Baptist. And I went back to the church I knew to try to discover something about who God was and what God meant in my life. And faith at that time meant you didn't ask questions. You just waited upon the Lord to fill you with knowledge, and that wasn't good enough for me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know more. So I wound up on the campus of McKendree College, not to be a preacher, but because I heard that they were affiliated loosely with the church. And I figured they could teach me everything I needed to know about God. And after I had been there for a year and a half, John Grove, the Reverend John Grove from the First Methodist Church in Lebanon, walked in the drugstore where I was working and asked me what I was studying at McKendree College. And I, not knowing anything, said, I am a Bartian scholar. Well, everybody that knows Karl Barth knows that there is no such thing as a Bartian scholar.
But you were one. That's important to know.
That was important.
There's no such thing, but you were one.
If there was one, I was it. I was the president of the Barth fan club.
That's good. That's good. Had a T-shirt, everything.
Had the T-shirt to prove it. And he literally invited me to his church. And I said, okay, never planned on going. But he would send people in that drugstore from his church to invite me to come. But then once he had to have an open heart surgery, in those days, you didn't go in the hospital and was out in 3 days. Open heart surgery was weeks before you came back.
If you came back at all,
That's
right?
exactly right. And he had all the dates in his church filled with speakers, and he wanted somebody from the college, and he thought I'd be good.
Well, you got that voice, right? Boom.
He thought I'd be good.
Yeah, that's it.
And I said, I wanted to say no, but it came out yes. And so I went to do the only thing I know I've seen done in the church. I went to preach. I didn't know anything about the Methodist Church, but I've seen preaching before.
There you go.
And I knew how to do that.
There you go.
And so I went and preached them for about an hour and 20 minutes.
I'm guessing they'd never heard anything like you.
Never, ever.
Never.
Never, ever. But at the end of that day, they said
you went for an hour and 20 minutes.
I did. When the church bell started ringing, I felt because they were quiet, that was their way of affirming me.
That's right. It's like an amen.
So
right?
the more the bell kept ringing, I thought, this is how they do it here.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. But at the end of that, they came to me and they said, you're going to be a good preacher, but you don't have to say it all the first Sunday.
That's good.
And they came along beside of me and they literally introduced me to Christ in a way that I have never seen Christ before, through the lives of other people, how Christ took brokenness and mended it in their lives. They poured into me their stories. They showed me how Christ could come in broken messes, and even though it seemed like a broken mess to me, you can be happy on the inside because they had a Jesus on the inside that I didn't have, and I wanted that. I wanted that something terrible.